Isolation marked her position before the lens. There was no professional set, no partner, and no prompter feeding her pre-written scripts. This was simply a grieving daughter addressing the camera on Christianity's holiest morning. Her message shattered expectations completely. She wasn't begging some criminal for mercy. No attorney had vetted this speech. While she didn't lose her composure, the struggle to stay grounded was visible in every syllable and gasp. Her remarks were packed with subtext and raw insight. For anyone listening carefully, they offered a clear look into Savannah Guthrie's current headspace and her genuine perspective on what finally became of her mother. While most viewers were moved to tears, a small minority began analyzing the footage. We belong to that second group today. First, consider the immense gravity of this specific time frame. It is currently Easter Sunday, April 5th, 2026. Nancy Guthrie has been gone for 63 days. There are no leads, no suspects, and still no Nancy. Tomorrow morning, Monday, April 6th, marks Savannah's return to the Today Show, set for her first broadcast since her mom vanished into that Arizona darkness. The physical and mental strain of hosting live morning TV is hard to imagine without doing it yourself. She's awake before 4 in the morning for styling, then goes live before a massive audience. At 6 o'clock the previous morning, instead of resting or bracing for such a significant, vulnerable professional milestone, she recorded a special video message. It wasn't for the network or any media briefing, but for a congregation, specifically Good Ship Shepherd, New York. A Manhattan congregation, Savannah, introduced her mother to roughly 10 years ago. Its massive digital presence now enables worshippers across the entire globe to join weekly worship through virtual broadcasts and online streams. This single detail changes how we view the entire situation. Nancy Guthrie wasn't just some casual viewer watching Good Shepherd alone from her living room in Tucson. Every single weekend, she met a tight-knit circle of friends at a nearby house in the Catalina foothills. It was their sacred, weekly tradition, a dedicated ritual where these women supported one another through faith. That continued until the specific Sunday morning when Nancy simply failed to show up. When she missed that digital service on the morning of February 1st, her social circle panicked instantly. They knew such an absence was completely out of character. Her family was alerted immediately. Annie, Savannah's sister, arrived at the house with her spouse, Tommaso Sion, to check the property. The unlocked door and bloodstains they discovered triggered the police response. That prayer meeting was the catalyst for this entire investigation. Now, 63 days later, Savannah is speaking to that exact same virtual congregation on the eve of this Easter holiday. Standing before the lens, she provides an incredibly nuanced and insightful testimony. It is arguably the most striking psychological statement from a victim's family in recent history. We must analyze her specific phrasing. Good morning, and a blessed Easter to you. Truly, Easter represents happiness, spring colors, and new beginnings. It embodies radiance, exhilaration, and optimism. It signifies transformation and fresh starts for the faithful. For believers, this stands as the pinnacle of the liturgical year. This day carries more weight than the Nativity or the crucifixion. The resurrection into eternal life is our most fundamental tenet. Christ's return to life mirrors our own spiritual destiny. Today, we celebrate the guarantee of an existence that transcends the finality of the grave. Yet, as I stand here, I must confess that such hope feels nearly impossible to reach sometimes. Occasions arise where surviving feels heavier than dying. These seasons of profound spiritual frustration and isolation are real. Most individuals will eventually face a period where these dark emotions dominate their daily reality. Our faith emphasizes that Jesus, during his earthly journey, navigated every single psychological hardship that we experience as human beings. By choosing to inhabit a human body, he wasn't just watching our suffering from afar, he was actively feeling it alongside us. Lately, however, during my own period of suffering, I have doubted. I have wondered if Jesus truly understood this specific pain I am carrying, this particularly brutal torture of total ambiguity, where answers are hidden and everything remains uncertain and confusing. In my lowest moments, I have felt quite bitter, thinking I found a specific type of agony that Jesus himself never had to face. Doesn't Scripture describe Jesus telling his followers about his path toward death and his eventual rise? Even if they were confused, he understood his own destiny. Though he suffered intensely, even weeping blood in the garden, he possessed the full picture. He was aware of how the story would eventually conclude. He knew pain was coming, followed by victory. So, I assumed he never felt this gut-wrenching lack of clarity. Questioning our Creator this way isn't forbidden. God doesn't require us to be emotionless statues or to hide behind empty platitudes about being His strongest warriors. He expects our raw honesty. Our internal conflicts and inquiries are opportunities for Him. Vulnerability acts as a gateway for spiritual insight, allowing divine truth to finally break through. That realization hit me while watching a vibrant desert sunset that contrasted sharply with my own internal gloom. The light finally found a way in. I suddenly thought about those 3 days spent in the tomb. We rarely discuss that period. Our focus is almost always on the joy of Easter. We prefer fast-forwarding to the celebration on Sunday morning. While we commemorate the agony of the crucifixion on Friday, we usually skip over the silence that followed. When Jesus died and passed into that darkness, what was His perspective? On that cross, He screamed out, asking why God had abandoned Him. That represents the desperate cry of a person left without any answers. Where was His essence during those intermediate days? What was His state of mind? Did those days in the tomb feel like a brief pause or an eternity? To Him, did the agony feel endless? That specific misery of the unknown, where temporary pain feels permanent, is something He likely shared. We all live in that space of uncertainty right now. We aren't waiting 3 days, but thousands of years for our final restoration. Faith provides the conviction that redemption is coming and every tear will be dried. Still, we exist in the difficult meantime, feeling discarded, angry, and hopeless. We find solace knowing our Creator experienced these same human struggles. He offers us empathy and His constant, comforting presence. Even when the answers we crave are not immediately provided, He guarantees a closeness to those who are hurting, a gentle spirit that makes this waiting period more bearable. Perhaps this perspective is too somber for today. I've always felt that the true joy of rising again is lost if we don't first sit with the weight of grief and the reality of passing away. The deep shadows are what give this dawn such a stunning, radiant glow. This brilliance shines even more intensely because we've been craving it so much. As I shut my lids today, I can sense the warmth on my skin. My mind drifts to a time when our world and the divine finally merge into a single reality. This is the heart of our observance right now. I'm standing here with you, my faith still intact. That's why I can wholeheartedly wish you a joyful holiday. The intro leans on classic spring themes, blooms, soft colors, small rabbits, and rays of optimism. It's the typical talk of new beginnings and safe, comfortable words. Yet, Savannah Guthrie isn't your average speaker. She stands as one of the country's premier media professionals. For years, she's mastered the art of picking every single syllable with incredible care on air. Vast audiences also recognize her as a successful writer regarding spirituality. Her work titled, Mostly What God Does, climbed to the top of the New York Times charts back in 2024. We are looking at someone who has explored her convictions thoroughly in the public eye. Because of that, you can sense the moment her holiday tone takes a sudden turn. She admits that while standing there, she sometimes feels like those sacred oaths are drifting beyond her reach. Consider the idea that existence feels much more agonizing than dying itself. Take a beat there. This isn't just about mourning, which usually suggests a final chapter. Normal loss is tragic but has boundaries you can eventually navigate. Instead, she's painting a picture of total uncertainty, the mental agony of being stuck between two different worlds. There's the hope that your mom is safe, and then there's the dark thought you won't even whisper. Saying life is tougher than death isn't a line polished by a PR team. Those are the words of a person who has spent many lonely nights weighing those terrifying options. It sounds like a woman who is still battling and rejecting the worst possible outcome. Next, she makes a move that is both spiritually sharp and emotionally gut-wrenching. She confesses to having doubts about the Creator. She notes that during her lowest points, she questioned if the Savior ever felt this particular sting of doubt or lack of clarity, as if the truth was being harshly kept away. Then she drops a religious insight that hits hard. According to Scripture, the Son of God understood His destiny. He explicitly shared with His followers that He'd perish and return. Even in His weakest hour, the blueprint was clear. He foresaw the agony followed by the triumph. While He wept in Gethsemane over the looming pain, the conclusion was never a mystery to Him. Savannah mentions this with a certain resentment. That's her phrasing, to be clear. She felt she'd uncovered a specific misery that even he hadn't tasted. The sheer torment of having no answers and no end in sight. Let the weight of those words sink in for a moment. This individual has built a very public life around her devout spiritual journey. After publishing a top-tier memoir regarding her spiritual journey, she now stands before the lens within the exact virtual room where her vanished mum sat each Sunday, admitting to weathering a heartache so unique and profoundly mortal that she doubted if even the Almighty had ever truly experienced such a crushing blow. This isn't just for show. It's a person speaking candidly about the 63 days of misery she's endured. Then comes the shift that the whole speech was leading up to. She returns her focus to the tomb. She points out how we usually skip straight to the celebration of the holiday. Everyone loves the joyful resolution, but we rarely discuss the 3 days of silence after the cross. What was going through his mind while buried in that cave? Was there a sense of time? Did he expect to be there for a few days or an eternity? Could that suffering have felt like it had no limit? Was that feeling of being lost permanent when he screamed out his final question? Did that plea come from someone with a plan, or someone paralyzed by a lack of understanding? Then she realizes that perhaps he did experience that void after all. Look past the religious talk to see what Savannah is truly trying to convey. She's talking about her own 63 days of isolation and doubt, with no guarantee that things will ever be made right again. She calls it the meantime. It's that harsh middle ground where your convictions are put to the test, not by facts, but by a lack of any response at all. Then, following 8 minutes of recorded inner turmoil, having openly confessed her deep resentment toward the divine, and after meticulously exposing her total mental collapse with surgical precision, she finally utters 3 words: "My faith remains." Despite the chaos, she keeps her faith. Then she offers a holiday greeting. Just imagine the strength required to say those words and truly feel them. Once the entryway was stained red, once a hooded gunman appeared on the security feed, once the digital coin ransom demands expired without any results, following a primary investigator with only 2 years on the force, and a sheriff fighting to keep his job. 63 days since her mom was taken while vulnerable and barefoot. Saying she still believes isn't just some nice sentiment for a church program. It's an act of defiance. We need to focus on her return to work tomorrow, because the significance of that move is being completely overlooked by the press. Being on air live is a terrifying level of vulnerability that even the pros dread when they're struggling inside. You can't hit stop or fix a mistake in post-production. The feed is rolling and the whole world is tuning in. Your physical self, worn down by trauma and sadness, Lehman doesn't always play along with the calm exterior you're trying to show the public. Few people grasp this reality as well as Savannah does. Her whole professional life has been built on live broadcasting. She's aware of how the lens exposes raw feelings, making her actions today seem incredibly deliberate. Posting that carefully timed holiday video was more than just a favor for her congregation. It seemed like she was testing her own gears. She was checking to see if she could still function under the spotlight before facing the ultimate test. She has to go before a massive audience tomorrow at 6 in the morning without any backup. While she succeeded today, tomorrow among her co-workers is still a big unknown. Back in the place where she's worked for 10+ years, we'll see if she can hold it together. We are certain she's returning, as confirmed by her network's rep. She's heading back for one clear reason. Using her platform to keep her mother's story alive is the best weapon she has left. This isn't someone who's throwing in the towel. As long as she can stand, she'll do whatever it takes to find her mom. And on the topic of what's going wrong with the case, we need to talk about the systemic breakdowns that are impossible to ignore. When the hunt for NY kicked off, the primary investigator only had 2 years of experience working murders. That is just 2 years of tenure for a massive probe featuring global headlines. The FBI, border protection, DNA experts, and hundreds of boots on the ground. Reports also surfaced that the lead investigator missed several daily update meetings. While his reasons are a mystery, in a nightmare case with thousands of leads pouring in, when various departments trade urgent intel and lab results while investigations are hot, skipping a meeting breaks the chain of command. In any kidnapping case, those lapses waste the one asset you can never reclaim: seconds. The sergeant running the squad has spent decades with the Puma County Sheriff's Office. Yet he was also quite green when it came to actually managing murder investigations. A law enforcement source told the news network off the record that this sergeant had never actually headed up a murder investigation before being put in charge of the entire detective unit's operations. Sheriff Nanos fired back at critics, pointing to the Reddington and Goodwill slayings as proof of success. Both of those investigations were wrapped up in just a few days. While that justification is certainly worth considering, seasoned officers still have a lingering grievance that the sheriff has failed to address in any truly meaningful or professional way. They failed to recall any extra staff, not even for a massive investigation involving the forced kidnapping of an 84-year-old lady who happened to be the mother of a famous news anchor right from her own monitored neighborhood. Major investigations usually require utilizing every possible tool, from calling back retirees to recruiting veterans and detectives who've handled similar crimes and possess the seasoned instincts essential for those first few hours. Policing agencies already possess the framework for this, allowing former cops and investigators to be temporarily sworn back in as expert advisors. This wealth of knowledge integrates seamlessly into less experienced units, helping them tackle massive, high-stakes scenarios they simply haven't faced before. Insiders familiar with the probe report that this step was skipped, despite having 400 personnel assigned to the manhunt at its height. Such a choice remains nearly impossible to justify. Locals in Puma County are now trying to boot Nanos from office after watching the search go nowhere for over 2 months without any suspects being named. Then there is the drama at the airport, which a resident brought up to the Board of Supervisors, supported by a Fox News digital police report. Back on November 6, 2024, way before NY went missing, Nanos showed up at Tucson International with a hot gun in his carry-on. With 5 bullets in the mag and another ready to fire, the scanner tech caught the weapon. Security moved Nanos to a private room to read him his rights, as per the book. He walked away without cuffs or charges. After putting the gun in his car, he simply caught a later flight. Federal rules allow cops to bring sidearms on a plane, but it requires a mountain of pre-approved forms, notifying the airline and TSA, and coordinating everything long before showing up at the terminal. If that prep work isn't done beforehand, having a pistol in your luggage is totally against the law. A local at the meeting kept it simple and just told it like it is. If a regular person did that, the ending would have been a whole lot different. Does this specific event impact the search for Nancy Guthrie? Most likely not. Yet it fuels a much deeper and far more damaging issue. People are losing faith in the very officials they trust to find Nancy. This fading trust means fewer leads come in. It kills the spirit of teamwork. Without public demand, cases stall when the trail goes cold. So, what is the current status of the file? What will finally break things wide open? Forensics remains the primary hope for detectives today, and this is the reason. Technicians found a fragmented profile in the victim's house. It is not hers, nor does it belong to anyone who belonged there. The lead scientist at Parabon, that Virginia-based lab famous for solving dead-end crimes, believes the complex makeup of this genetic evidence offers a real chance for a massive and hopeful breakthrough. Finding mixed DNA at a scene with signs of a struggle, like the blood near the door, suggests a killer left some of their own samples behind during the fight. Once that evidence is fully run, they can check it against family tree databases. This tech finds far-off relatives like cousins or uncles, allowing police to work backward until they have a specific name. This is no theory. It is the exact same way they finally caught the Golden State Killer after 40 years. It is also how they tracked down Brian Koberger for those Idaho killings in November 2022. It just takes a while. It might take months or even more, but when this method hits, the results are ironclad. Besides DNA, police are still analyzing the doorbell video. That armed person in a mask, about 5'9", with a Walmart backpack messing with the lens at 2:12 a.m., is still the best clue they have. Cops are teaming up with Walmart to find the bag, checking gun stores for the weapons seen on tape, and even trying to track NY's pacemaker signal. Then there is the reward, totaling $1.2 million. The family gave $1 million, the FBI $100,000, and Crime Stoppers $12,500. Michael Huppy, a lawyer out of Wisconsin who put up $100,000 for the bounty, shared an insight recently that everyone should hear. When a case sits cold for too long, it is almost certain that someone with the facts has blabbed to another person. Maybe a secret was whispered to a spouse in a moment of weakness, or some punk was bragging to the wrong crowd. A guilty conscience leads to a whisper, then a phone call, and finally a pair of handcuffs. Past cases solved by DNA or because someone couldn't keep their mouth shut prove this happens every day. If you have any info or saw something weird, like a friend acting suspicious around February 1st, 2nd, or 3rd, or when those security photos went viral and the hooded guy was all over the news, dial 1-800-CALL-FBI. The phone line is live, the money is waiting, and you can stay anonymous through Crime Stoppers. Going back to the beginning, Easter Sunday, a woman on screen, and a message that left everyone crying. But if you paid attention, you saw more than just sadness. Savannah Guthrie's message was not some emotional collapse. It was not an act. After 63 days in a literal living hell, she stood tall, looked at the camera, and told us exactly what she was thinking. She admitted to doubting God, no filters and no excuses. Her peace did not come from an arrest or finding NY, or even identifying the man on the porch. Her resolve lives in the basic, stubborn, and painful choice to maintain faith when every scrap of reason suggests otherwise. She goes back to her job tomorrow, but the horror hasn't actually ended. She is back, because while this ordeal persists, she won't be muffled. Every day Savannah appears, Nancy's story remains visible to millions of viewers across the country. Each plea, every statement, and every minute of public grit keeps the pressure on the detectives, ensures the community stays involved, and sustains the possibility that the specific individual, the one burdened by what they know, finally places that call. Genetic samples are being tested. Bounty money is sitting there. Detectives are working hard, and a witness out there knows exactly who hid behind that mask. Nancy Guthrie needs to be found, and the culprit behind this must deal with the heavy fallout of their crimes. Since mysteries solved by genetics, tech trails, and the gradual collapse of deception eventually break, the facts won't stay hidden. Things come to light. They always do. When they do, we will be ready. If this message resonated with you, spread the word, not for the clout, but for Nancy. Higher viewership means a better shot that the actual witness watches this too. Post what you are thinking in the thread underneath. Explain what you think Savannah's holiday update really implied. Give me your ideas on what eventually solves this crime. If you are a new follower, sign up because we never quit. We do not lose focus, and we will not rest until we find the truth. What we witness in this story is not just a missing person case, it is a powerful reflection of what uncertainty does to the human soul. The greatest pain is not always loss itself, but the absence of answers. When something ends, grief has a direction. It hurts, but it is defined. What Savannah Guthrie endures is something far more complex, the torment of the meantime, where hope and fear exist side by side and neither wins. This teaches us a profound truth. The human mind struggles most, not with tragedy, but with ambiguity. In life, we often believe strength means certainty. We think faith means never doubting, but this story dismantles that illusion. True resilience is not the absence of fear, anger, or doubt. It is the ability to stand up while carrying all of them at once. Savannah's words remind us that questioning, even questioning God, is not weakness. It is honesty. And honesty is the foundation of real strength. Another critical lesson lies in visibility. Savannah's decision to return to live television is not just professional, it is purposeful. She understands that attention keeps a story alive. In a world flooded with information, forgotten stories become unsolved cases. Her presence becomes a form of resistance, a refusal to let silence take over. This highlights the power of voice. Speaking up consistently and publicly can sustain momentum when systems begin to stall. At the same time, the investigation itself reveals systemic vulnerabilities. Delayed coordination, inexperience, and missed opportunities remind us that time is the most valuable currency in any crisis. Once lost, it cannot be recovered. This is a lesson not only for law enforcement but for all of us. Preparedness, communication, and accountability are not optional in high-stakes situations, they are everything. Yet, even in the face of institutional flaws and emotional devastation, there remains hope. Not a naive or comfortable hope, but a stubborn, defiant one. The kind that exists not because everything makes sense, but because giving up would mean surrendering to darkness. Advances in forensic science, like genetic genealogy, show us that truth has a way of resurfacing even years later. Technology evolves, but so does human persistence. Perhaps the most meaningful takeaway is this: endurance is not quiet. It is not passive. It is an active, daily decision to continue, whether through faith, action, or simply refusing to look away. Savannah's message was not just about belief, it was about choosing to keep going when every reason suggests stopping. In the end, this story challenges us to rethink what strength looks like. It is not found in perfect composure or unwavering certainty. It is found in vulnerability, in persistence, and in the courage to face the unknown without turning away. Because eventually, truth surfaces. And when it does, it is carried there by those who refuse to let it disappear.